Welcome to California in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. A California think tank is suing the state over a law that bans employer-mandated meetings that share the employer's opinion on religious or political matters, saying the rule violates the First Amendment. Joining me with more on this story is the Center Square's California reporter, Kenneth Schrupp. Kenneth, what is this law and what is the motivation behind it?
Hey, Eliana. Just to be clear, this rule only applies to sort of mandatory meetings on political or religious matters where the employer shares their opinion on such. But the issue is that this encompasses employers that might include think tanks, nonprofits, or even religious groups where discussing these matters in meetings is essential to the core functioning of the organization. So this rule, or at least what its proponents say, is inspired by when a Pittsburgh company told its workers to clock in on the day of a 2019 visit by President Donald Trump or not get paid if they didn't clock in. They also said that attendance at the event itself was not mandatory. This somehow became the basis for a rule on mandatory meetings where discussion of employers' views on politics or religion was shared.
What were some of the things that the supporters of this bill had to say as to why they brought this legislation?
State Senator Aisha Wahab, who represents Hayward, which I believe is in the Bay Area, really hammered on that this 2019 Trump visit made the legislation necessary because of what are called captive audience meetings. She said that these captive audience meetings are effective and has led to employers using forced meetings for political and religious purposes. Here's what she said on the matter. The Royal Dutch Shell Company invited then-candidate Trump to give a speech at their facility in 2019. The employers sent a memo to workers stating that attendance of the Trump rally was, quote, not mandatory, end quote, but that if they did not clock in to work that day, they would lose pay and become ineligible to receive the 16 hours of overtime pay, end quote. So from her own justification for the law, it's not exactly clear how what happened at the 2019 event and what is outlined in this law are correlated at all, but this is the justification she gave.
So then what are California Policy Center's concerns about this? You mentioned this would cause problems for certain organizations. This is just such a one. Can you tell us sort of about the lawsuit that they're bringing?
Right. So the California Policy Center is a state-focused think tank, and it says that its work is politics-focused because it is a state-focused policy think tank, and so its normal day-to-day meetings are illegal under the law, or at least to require employees' attendance. The issue is if they can't require that employees attend basic meetings to its core function, they're facing serious problems. The Liberty Justice Center, which is representing the California Policy Center, said, quote, this restriction on the CPC's ability to hold mandatory employee meetings about political matters important to its mission and daily work violates the organization's right to free speech under the First Amendment. Seems very straightforward. So the Liberty Justice Center is filing for a preliminary injunction to block the law from taking effect. We don't have any news on that yet, but that lawsuit is moving forward. The issue here, though, is that fines for companies could be immediate. The companies that fail to comply with the law face civil lawsuits and damages, in addition to fines of $500 per employee per incident. So if this bill does start to be enforced, then we could see some major costly bills start to be racked up for organizations like California Policy Center.
One would hope if someone applied for a job at a policy think tank, they wouldn't sue their employer for talking about politics, but I guess you never know.
You know, one can only hope. It just takes, one big paycheck, one big payday from one big California lawsuit. Remember the Judicial Hellhole Index said California is one of the top places for winning a so-called, I think it was a nuclear verdict, where you get a very large, an unexpected settlement or a liability payout at a court trial. So you never know.
Well, Kenneth, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.